Hello everyone, welcome to my film review show. Today we're going to be talking about All We Imagine as Light. This is a film directed by payal kapadia. This is Kapadia's feature-length fictional debut, and it made quite a splash at Cannes last year, winning the Grand Prix, and I actually discovered that this is the first film to be placed in the official selection for Cannes in over 3 decades, which is kind of crazy and kind of sad. India has such a rich film history dating back all the way to the beginning of cinema, and it had its golden age just as many other independent film movements did. And in recent years, Indian cinema has been finding itself in sort of a rebirth with a lot of women directors telling very personal stories, and this, I think, lies among that. This film got distributed to my local theater, so I did get to catch it, and I'm just gonna be really blunt and say that I fucking love this film. It's rare to find a film with so much heart, so much soul, that strikes such a careful balance between the sort of nuanced, visually engaging, emotional storytelling with an actually deep and delving into the emotion of the characters. I feel like sometimes when films try to get a little abstract or try to be a little more, again, visually engaging rather than like giving us like a string of dialogue, it can sometimes get lost in the abstraction and not really connect with its audience in the way that I think it's trying to. And on the other side, sometimes there can be a lot of sort of expository dialogue, or maybe it can use the dialogue as a means to kind of give us the themes or the mental state of the character, and it feels a little artificial as well. But this film strikes such a perfect balance of these two things that it just creates something really transcendent. This film follows 3 women who work at a hospital. 2 of them are nurses and one of them is the hospital's cook. And we follow them as they sort of navigate the chaotic, difficult, sometimes lonely urban living in a city like Mumbai. These 3 women find connection with each other as the 2 nurses are roommates, and one of the nurses and the cook are friends. And the 3 women are very different people, and they're in very different situations, experiencing different things. But at the end of the day, it seems that they all have a sort of shared isolation that they feel, a sort of shared decay that they're experiencing from being in the city. One of the central characters, Prabha, is a middle-aged nurse, and her estranged husband is currently working in Germany. And she's kind of, getting by, living her life, and she doesn't really think about it too much until she receives a rice cooker as a gift unexpectedly from her estranged husband. And there's a sort of mystery around this rice cooker, like, why did he send the rice cooker? Like, why haven't you called me in a year? That sort of thing. And we're never really told more about the rice cooker. And, with the rice cooker, that could be a sort of way of the husband being like, well, here, I'm thinking of you. But it could also be like a send-off gift. And, either way, there's quite a weight to this receiving of the rice cooker. There's a very heartbreaking scene where Anu, her roommate, who's sort of a younger nurse, is kind of going off with her secret boyfriend, and they're having like this very romantic time together, and the way this scene is filmed is very loving. Like, you can see the connection between these two. And then we cut to Prabha, who is embracing her rice cooker as if it was her husband, and that is just such a gut punch. So we have Prabha, who's sort of like a very pragmatic woman, who's kind of ruminating over her estranged husband and what his absence sort of means to her and how she's navigating that sort of loneliness. And then we have Anu, her roommate, who's kind of a younger, more sprightly, maybe more rebellious character. The central sort of conflict with her character is that she's been dating this Muslim boy in secret, and she's been basically kind of trying to navigate how she's going to integrate this man into her life when she is afraid of sort of the social repercussions of that decision. And then we have Parvati, who is Prabha's friend and the hospital's cook. And she's having trouble with her apartment. There's like a property developer that wants to demolish her house to build a skyscraper. And her late husband didn't provide her the paperwork to say that, no, I actually live here. Like, I have the right to live here. And so she's finding trouble sort of navigating that as well. And all of these situations are very different, and they have sort of different physical and like realistic repercussions. But at the end of the day, what this story focuses a lot more on is the sort of isolation that comes with the chaos of urban living and sort of the bustling nature of all of these happenings in the city that sort of cancel out any moment to just be human, any moment to just sort of live in the moment and like transform your environment into something healing. The first half of the film is in Mumbai, and it sort of focuses a lot on building the turmoil of all three of these characters in differing ways. There are definitely moments of, friendship and joy and love, but there's a lot of sadness. And the second half of the film takes place in Parvati's old village, Ranagiri. And at this point, the tone of the film completely shifts into something a bit more meditative. And it does a really great job of sort of juxtaposing the chaos and the turmoil that the women experience in the city to the sort of peace that they end up finding in the village. And there's a great scene that kind of divides these two halves of the film, where there's sort of documentary style footage of a celebration happening in the city, and there's a voiceover from, I believe it could be Prabha. I think it's Prabha's voiceover, where she's sort of talking about how Mumbai is seen by a lot of people as the city of dreams, but actually it's the city of illusions. And this is sort of a great thesis for the film, basically saying that there's an illusion of grandeur and celebration in the city that you have to buy into, and if you don't buy into it, you'll lose your mind living there, which is kind of what we experience with all three of our characters. I guess I say it's a big tonal shift, but I think the tone of the whole film is honestly very meditative. It is a meditative sort of turmoil that we see. And it's nothing too overbearing. It's not so like in your face. It's very subtle and it's very patient. The film moves at a very patient rate, and I think it succeeds because of that. We really get to marinate in the mental processes of these characters, and it makes for a really transcendental experience. It's kind of hard to talk about this film without like spoiling it, because there's a lot that happens that sort of reinforces this transformation. And I feel like it's just a film you have to go see to understand how these events play out into something that's really transformative. But something else I really love about this film is that there's a very clear sort of political worldview here. The idea that women in India and maybe South Asia in general have these sort of predetermined destinies that they have set out for them. And perhaps this is a way for the many different experiences that women in South Asia can finally find their liberation, find their spiritual freedom. And it's done so well. It's done, again, so patiently and with such nuance, yet it never feels like it's too abstract to resonate. It's there. It's very clear. And I think this is also a rumination on urban living, this sort of like, yeah, city living can be very exciting and very invigorating and very inspiring in some cases, but in a lot of cases it ends up being very isolating, and you kind of feel like you're decaying in this endless sea of activity, that when you get away from it for a moment, you kind of reconnect with your humanity, reconnect with the world around you, because you just have time and space to do so. And it just does this so beautifully, and the performances are just so careful. The performances just bring this really detailed care to that sort of transformation, that experience that I think is really profound. And the last act of this film really hit home for me. It's just, it sort of brought it all together. And I think that's quite rare for a lot of films these days. I feel like a lot of films really falter in their third acts, but this one really delivered for me. Yeah, I love this film a lot. And I think if you're someone who maybe has trouble with sort of slower, more meditative, more abstractly character-driven stories, you might have trouble with this, but this film reminds me a lot of something like Claire Denis' Beau Travail, although maybe a little less abstract. But yeah, I love this film. And if you're someone who loves art house films, but at the same time loves a really emotionally resonant character drama, you need to see this. But I think I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.